Good morning, Caylee. How you
Hey,
doing?
Greg.
I'm wearing black today because I wanted to sort of think more about like getting back in the black, getting back into
Oh,
profit.
I like it.
Yes, it's a deliberate choice, but part of getting back to profit really is about reducing expenses, and also really mostly, importantly, is just like cutting those costs, right? Because as we talked earlier about the holes in the bucket, that's where the money is leaving. You've got the hoses in the top, which is the money you bring in, but then you've got all the money going out of the bottom. So let's talk
Hmm.
about that. Let's honor the shirt and talk about getting back in black by closing some of those holes and keeping some of that money in the company.
I love that analogy. And just to elaborate on that, like, I don't know if that's like a common term. Like, does everybody know what that means? In the black, in the red, like we hear it,
Yeah,
but does everyone know that in the red means the business is losing money, and in the black means it's gaining money? And
right.
I, I don't know, because black doesn't always black sounds like the black hole. Like, it doesn't sound like, I don't know, it should be green or something for money,
Hey,
but
I know it comes from the old days. Just a little. I actually know the history on that.
oh, cool.
Typewriters used to have a ribbon with black and red.
Okay.
And when you wanted to show that the money was leaving the company, you'd switch to the red ribbon and put that number in red. Otherwise, it was always black. So
Okay,
that's
so
where
that's where
black
that
and
came
red comes from.
Oh, that's good to know, because
Well,
I like to call it green because we
yeah,
see money.
it should be.
But then the money's not going to be green in the future anyway. So
That's right. Yeah,
awesome. So the places where salons need to look for money,
mm,
that's what we'll talk about today, right? So
absolutely.
we've covered kind of like the importance of understanding financial documents, all of that, so that you can see where your company needs you to find money. So it's going to speak the language to you to say, look here for money. And then you can see like, what's the area that I can hit it the hardest to get the best results.
Right.
So the mistake I made in my company was I was terrified to make the big changes. And so I started looking for pennies everywhere. And so things like renegotiating my Moneris machine and just negotiating on every purchase and really trying to reduce all those costs. So I found lots of pennies in my business, but it didn't move the dial enough to really get us into profit. And so some of the biggest leaks in the salon industry are your support staff,
Okay.
your commission staff, and your color wastage. It's like huge, right?
Sure. Sure.
And so these are the three areas to, like, if you really want to see some quick turns, some quick results, these are the three areas to focus on. But even better, when you actually know your numbers, you can focus on the area that's out of whack in your business. So, I can give you like these overall general strategies and you can try to do them all, but that takes a long time. Or you can learn to read the story your numbers telling you, and you can be like, ooh, I need to work on that strategy.
Right.
So it
Right.
gets really specific, and then you're really maximizing your time spent, right?
Yeah. But don't we need people in our operation to make the day go by and to service our clients and to make sure that everything is running properly? Maybe unpack that one a little bit, because we always hear about these companies who get into financial trouble, and the big headline in the news is they had to do layoffs and they had to let all these people go. There must be something behind that. So maybe unpack that a bit for us. How do people play into that cost cutting piece?
Yeah, well, I think we just don't realize how the small things add up. And so it doesn't mean we don't need support staff or we don't need the people. It's just we can be a bit more strategic about how we have them
Right.
and when we have them. And it was interesting, like reviewing some of my numbers, my journey owning Hype. And one year we had higher sales and less reception. And then another month we had lower sales and more reception. And so that's just sloppy scheduling, right?
Gotcha.
Because we shouldn't have needed more support staff to do a less volume of sales. So
Mhm.
when you really start to tap into, again, like the story that your numbers are telling you, you can really hone in on how you're scheduling people. And just to give an idea of what that could look like, if you scrape off an hour a day, say you're paying a receptionist $20 an hour,
Okay.
you scrape off an hour a day, 5 hours a week, that's like over $400 a month that you just put back in the business. And it's not a huge impact to their life. either, right?
Mhm.
Like having 1 hour less is not there. It's not going to be like a make it or break it for them. Whereas if we want to change the dial on how we pay our stylists, that's a whole structural overhaul. We have to introduce this whole new thing. It's very disruptive to the business. Sometimes it's essential and needs to be done, but it's a lot more disruptive than just like, let's tweak the hours a little bit. And so I actually created this really cool tool, and I've made it free because I want everyone to have it. And when I was doing my schedule, I would sit with a pen and paper and I would write out my budget, and then I would write how much I'm paying everyone an hour. And I'd try to get them the hours that they need, because you also have full-time people that have to pay their rent and have their budget. So like, okay, we promised this person 30 hours, and trying to make that work, and like erasing and scribbling. And it would take me so many crumpled up pieces of paper. So we got smarter.
We did.
And so we created this awesome tool. So could I share that with you, Greg?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at it.
So,
You know, by the way, while you're setting that up, I just did some quick mental math. And the mental math I did was it's about $50,000 over 10 years with that 1 hour, right?
wow.
4,800 a year. So yeah, that's kind of what I arrived at, which is pretty big dollars when you think about it, right? That's a down payment on a small condo in a mid-sized town.
It's huge. And I love that you actually like assign that money to something else, right?
Yeah,
Of like, what could that money be doing? And even think about like a 15-minute overclock, right? Which means like they were scheduled till 8, but then one of the stylists was running late, so they didn't end up leaving till 8:15. And that alone is going to be $100 a month if they clock out 15 minutes late every day. So if we're not really looking at these small things, they can really add up, like you said, over time to a lot of money. And so we need to like drive a tight ship here to make sure that the business model is working. So this is how we do it. And it's so easy and effective is we just have this cool little calculator. And what did you say earlier about like, let the spreadsheets do the work, right? Like this is not about having an overwhelming spreadsheet. This is about the spreadsheet doing all that work I just told you I did for hours trying to do pen and paper and calculator. Like that's a lot of work. So
totally. I mean, us humans, we should be creating, making people look great, working our magic, doing our thing, not fiddling with numbers. Let these, free tools do all the calculation for you.
Yeah. So this is really cool. You put in your budget. Now, the standard benchmark is 10%. The benchmark I recommend is 12%. I could never like figure out how to balance it out at 10%. So as long as you have to make sure you have room for that in your budget, first of all. So that's the work we do in the Profit Project is like actually figuring out what does your budget have to be, because it's going to be different for everyone. But if you just want to start with like a generic budget, let's give you 12%.
Okay.
And then we pop in your sales, say your sales are 50,000.
Can I just back up one sec? So just to be clear, the support team budget, we're looking at 12% of total sales for our support team, right? That's what that 12% is?
Total sales, yeah. So for every $100 that comes into your business, 12 of it's going back into your support team.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And just quickly define, what would you consider support team?
So your support team is your assistants, your apprentices, and you, or your manager, right? But you're likely, if it's a small business, you are the manager and you're likely working for free right now. So we need to get you paid too.
Yeah, no, we can't work for free. That's ridiculous. So we actually include ourselves in the support team. That's part of the 12%.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know.
So this, pop it in, gives you your budget per year, per month, per week. So we see we have 72,000 to spend per year, right? So this is where it's kind of eye-opening if all of a sudden you have a $30,000 budget to work from. Like that's not really even a full-time minimum wage person's salary. And you've got here you've got maybe 2 apprentices and you've got 2 receptionists and you've got you to pay. And it's like, whoa, I've got $30,000 to work with. That, we need to make some changes quickly here.
That's for sure.
So this alone, just popping in those 2 numbers is really eye-opening to kind of figure out, what kind of money are you working with? And then we go to the second tab and here we go. Here's our budget. And now we can start putting the names in. And so we've got Rebecca and she works for $18 an hour, and she's 20 hours.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. So just to back up a little bit. So in the little green box here, you've got that budget calculator, that number 1,395. That came from the previous tab, correct? It sort of
Yeah,
was automatically put in.
that's my weekly budget. And
Gotcha.
then as I type in here, what I'm going to be paying people, it's going to reduce that budget. So I can see when I run out.
Okay.
And so I can see how I can tweak it. I've also got this up here just as like a parking lot to put, okay, how many hours am I open? Let's say I'm open 60 hours. What's my ideal? Like, we'd all love someone to come in and have the coffee machine primed
sure.
and have everything clean, and right. So my ideal is like 70 hours if I've got 60 hours open, and like 30 hours of assistant support, and maybe 5 hours of management. And then my minimum, and then I need to go, and this is where it gets, where you can shave off those hours, is my minimum. When is there, like, at what's the breaking point where I have to have someone? And so for us, it was like, we could have like 2 to 3 stylists that knew how to do cash out, that were key holders, scheduled in for the first 3 hours. And then when the bulk of them came and there was like 5 to 8 people working, we had to have someone doing checkout because it just got too chaotic. So we knew that that time at the end of the day could be people working with no reception. Beginning of the day, if we staggered the shifts, and we just needed that 5 hours during the day covered. So let's say we got this down to like 30 hours out of those 60 that are kind of jammed, that we really need support. So that's our minimum level of support.
That's a big spread. That's a big spread,
huge.
30 to 70. I mean, in terms of what we want and what we may be kind of over time, I don't want to use the word lulled, but we just sort of, things just sort of happen after a while. You look around, you go, why are all these people here? And then you've got your minimum, which is really what you really need to get through the week, right? To service your clients properly.
Yeah, exactly. And it was an interesting conversation I had with one of my clients, and he did $160,000 of sales in 1 year, which is like awesome amount of sales. But he had 2 assistants, and they were 30,000 each. So imagine how much like less he had to work to generate 100,000 than to generate 160 and pay 2 people out to do that.
Yeah.
So he could have had a lot more lifestyle, probably taken lunch break, done a lot of things differently, and had a lot less wear and tear on his body and all of these things. So it was really like eye-opening when we started to look at this, how to plan for it, right? And be a bit more strategic about it.
So this little parking lot here in your tool, is it just, what happens to these numbers? Do they go somewhere else, or is it just something to keep?
They just stay there so I can keep it in mind when I'm actually figuring this out. So I'm like, okay, here I've got 20 hours covered, no problem. And then, but say maybe I wanted a full-time person, so 40 hours here because I'm working towards my ideal. And then say I'm the manager and I'm going to work 4 hours, but my rate is 50. So I've still got money left. So I'm doing good, right? So now I can get this second part-timer here. I can decide if I want them, and maybe they're at 15. They're like after school kind of person. And I still got a little bit of money to play with. So
you could give Rebecca a raise. Let's give Rebecca a little raise to $19 an hour to help out Heidi, and just see what happens. You still have a little bit of money. All right.
That's cool. Got some money. Yeah. So this is where, this is not always the case though, right? So, but we said we wanted 70 hours. So let's increase Heidi's hours, right? 30. Okay. Now we're over budget.
Right.
And we can't leave it here, because if we lose $14 a week, we start the debt spiral and we start paying interest on that money, and then we get into trouble. So we can't give Heidi 30. So let's give Heidi 28. And I like to leave a bit of budget remaining for that overclocking that can happen, but we got to be really diligent on that too. So this is just super simple because I can play with, I've got assistants down here, I've got management time here, so I can really play with that. And then as my sales grow, I just change that sales number and it gives me that new budget. But what's really important is that when you actually look, because there's benchmarks is one thing, benchmarks is industry standards, what could be possible for you. But when you actually look at your own numbers and we can see well, your rent's really high,
Mm.
so you can only spend 6% on support staff because you're paying way more rent than everybody else.
Mm.
Or your rent's really low. And so if you really want to give this luxurious experience to everyone, let's spend 15% there because you've made it up in another category. So that's where everyone, you know, just has to be careful that this is a really generic recommendation and help you figure this part out. But you may want to look a lot deeper to figure out really what's the perfect percentage for you.
This is so amazing. So the first tab, if you can you go back to the first tab, because we can kind of use this as a bit of a tool. Let's say everybody gets together for a staff meeting and Rebecca says, we could really use another person on the desk on Fridays to deal with whatever, to deal with walk-ins, to deal with weekend sales, to handle bookings, to do this or whatever. And you look back on your second tab and you realize you're down to like, you don't really have the money. Could you tinker with your monthly income here to see what you've like if you change the income a little bit to, let's say, $60,000 on the first tab?
Well, let's add the extra hours in first.
Yeah.
So we want to add another full day. So let's make it
35, let's say
36. Yeah.
Or 36,
whatever, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're losing $100.
Right.
And so $100. So to reverse engineer this for me, Greg, you got a math brain.
Well, 100 times, I don't know, make it 56,000. It's not much. It's only
56,000.
Yeah.
And that was enough. Yeah.
So
we can say if we increase, so that's, you know, we never like to say no to our team because they're telling us a need that they have. So we can say not now, but here's how we get it. Right. Actually, I like that little not now, but here's how.
Yeah.
It kind of rhymes too.
Well, that's right. It becomes a little too, so it makes a great conversation in management when you sit down with your team and they say, you know, and very often people at the front lines can help you, you know, really drive your business forward, especially if they're thinking and they see an opportunity and they come to you and say, hey, you know, hey boss, if we do this, then we can do that. And I think our customers and clients will be happy and maybe we can sell an extra whatever service or whatever it is. And very often we sort of shrug our shoulders and say, you know what, we don't have enough money for that.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity to say, that's a great idea. Let's move forward. Let's build our business. We have to, you know, keep our costs. When we talk about cutting costs, we can adapt, we can accommodate new costs if we can just go up to 56, which really isn't a lot when you think about it.
Yeah, especially if you have a whole team working together on
Totally.
it.
And then you can set up some targets and opportunities and say, okay, let's try this out and see if it works. Kind of more transparency, bit of a more modern workplace, right?
Yeah. Or what you can also do is we can find a bigger budget for it by reducing other expenses. So if we can reduce our color waste budget, we can tack that onto our support staff budget. And so now you're really engaging the team in something that they can influence.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about that. So we've got HR. We know it's a big expense. People cost money. They've got to be there. And there's a great expression that comes from a chap by the name of Parkinson. And his expression is work expands into resources allocated to it, which means roughly, if you put 3 people on a job, you can also put 5 people on the same job, and the job will be accomplished in the same amount of time because people, humans, the way we are, will just make ourselves busy. So, and we will do that in whatever way we need. So it's actually called a law, Parkinson's law. And so the trap for businesses is that we tend to sometimes throw people at problems as opposed to looking at the problem and seeing how we can reduce the requirements of it. So again, that's where this sort of, you know, the names on that sheet, I can see them building and the hours beginning to spread out. So we're against, you know, we battle it, a law like gravity. So.
Oh, it's so true. And this is the same with time, right? Like if you have more time to do a task, you're going to take it. And if you have less time, you're going to just bang it out. Right. So
funny how that works, huh?
It is. And it's just fun. Like, I think the biggest takeaway here that I would want the listeners to leave with is that you can influence the outcome of your business. So it's not just like I'm doing, busy, working hard. And I see what I end up with at the end of the month. No, you can actually like look ahead and you can influence the outcome that you're going to get. And so I guess that's just the message I want to share with people is don't hide away from this stuff. Don't put your head in the sand. You know, think to yourself, I'm not good with numbers, all of that stuff, because just as we've shown you here, you know, it's a quick exercise you can do, and you get to influence that budget, which is going to give you more profit at the end of the day. And then more profit means a healthier, better company, happier team, and happier you. And so as you free up like some of these tasks, you get more time back too. So it's just a ripple effect of your time and efforts and energy to have a better business. And
100%.
I think like, part of the problem, Greg, is most salon owners didn't open saying, I want to make $1 million or I want to be rich, or, you know, that wasn't their motivation. They usually want to just give a really awesome service, and they want to be an industry leader. They want to be known for good work. And so that's, you know, the focus that they're going in with, which is amazing. But think about your numbers as a measuring stick to that performance. And so if we can measure how you're doing there, as your numbers grow, it means you are doing all those things. So we need to stop looking at numbers as numbers, but as a story and as a measuring stick to all those great things that we set out to do.
Right. Absolutely. And eventually we'll want to do things like put our kids into a decent, you know, secondary, like post-secondary education, retire with dignity, take the vacations we want, support our parents as they get older, give money to charity, you name it. All of those things take a certain amount of money. That's just the way the world works. So we have to then get there by doing this kind of stuff, right?
Exactly. A lot of cool things you can do.
I know, all the cool things, right? Like take up windsurfing. Let's talk about then, you mentioned color wastage, but that could also be product wastage. Just let's touch on that. So we've got, okay, the people definitely, I can see that's a big number. How about product wastage, and how does that creep into the mix?
So product wastage is huge. I could almost guarantee that your budget's too high if you're not measuring it.
Okay.
And so the only way to measure it is to do regular inventory accounts. And most salons are only doing them at the end of the year. So they're just not seeing what's actually getting used. There's some great new companies out there that help you track it, like Salon Scale is one that we'll put a few links in this video because we've got some resources. So we're going to put a link for that free tool, and let's put a link for Salon Scale. And so that's actually like weighing out the color usage. So you're starting to track it, but the only way to get a true usage number is a good old fashioned inventory count and learning the proper tracking, which is what we teach in the course. It's too much for me to unpack in this quick call today. But it's really important. And I tell you like all the reasons why it's important, like theft. And I know everyone thinks no one will steal. I have a story for you for another day about that, because everyone thinks no one will steal from them. But there's also the wastage, which is huge. And even in hype, where we were super dialed in on it, when we weren't having the conversations at every meeting, the number would creep up.
Sure. And
then we bring it back and we do a contest. And here's a good idea for a contest is if we can get this wastage number down, we'll do a hot lunch on a Saturday to celebrate.
I like that.
And so, you know, that only costs you like $25 per person, and you may have brought the number down by thousands of dollars. So there's some really cool ways, but if you're not measuring it, then you have no clue. And if you're not measuring it, my guess would be you're in over 10% of your budget. So let's say you're paying your staff inflated 50 or 60% commission. We know we've got 10 to 12 here for support staff. We know we've got 6 to 10 for rent. Now we've got like 10 to 12 for color wastage. Like these numbers aren't
we're getting close to 100. I'm scared. That's close to the edge. I don't like
it's like, woo. So that's where we need to like run a tight ship and know where every penny is going so that we can squeeze out some profit. And that comes from monitoring it every single month. And if you're like, my team doesn't waste, and you've got it dialed in 1 month, like I promise you it's fluctuating. And if you're not going to bring the energy back to it, and engage the team in that, your product costs are too high. I can tell you right now, I don't even have to look at your financials. I don't have to look at anything. I can just tell you, if you're not putting your energy into controlling it, your number's too high already. So that's an area that you can put some energy into.
Yeah, we've all seen that, right? We've seen, like, even I have hardly any hair, Yet I do notice that whenever I get my hair done, like washed at a salon, like I can hear the pumps going out of the thing. I'm going, I only need like half a pump and you're doing 6 because I don't have long, thick hair.
Yeah.
Um, and I always kind of I wince a little bit, not because, because I
Well, and
know
how
that.
about all the treatments that they never add on at the till after, right? Like they use this Kerastase treatment that costs the salon $7 and then they forget to bill the client for it. Or,
Right.
all these things that you kind of can't control, but you can control them, because when you see, oh, our product costs are really high, let's have a conversation with our team about it. They're kind of like little brothers and sisters. They can't wait to tell on each other.
Yeah.
And so they're like, so-and-so dumped this out, or so-and-so didn't bill this. And, they really, when you actually bring attention to it, they do start to monitor each other, which is really nice. Because if you can pitch it to them as the goal, the goal isn't only for your own gain. The goal is for a better business and when you can free up some of that money, now you can do that reno that they've been asking for. Now you can we actually this was another fun incentive we did, is we had a chart in the back room and we had a goal to buy the new floor. So we got a quote on the new floor. And so we put our budget for products at 7%, and anything under 7%, we applied to the new floor. So we would start to color up this chart to show, so say we got 6%, then we'd put that 1% onto the new floor. So we budgeted a bit higher for product, but anything that they could, save under that by being clever, mixing up different tubes of color to get the outcome that they needed, instead of opening a new tube, using some of the old color that is discontinued before opening the new boxes. Like all these little things, when the team's engaged in it, you can really move the dial. And so that was a really fun way that they could start to see the results of like that tube. Them not washing the color down the sink wasn't to put it in the owner's pocket. That's not very motivating. It was to get them something that they wanted in the business. And so when they could see that direct correlation, they're a lot more dialed in on their own wastage, right?
Yeah, and you make a really good point, because a lot of times we think about the culture of an organization, right? And culture can be one of several things, but the worst type of culture is, I just work here, nobody cares about me, the owner takes all the money, this is just a job, I come and I go. And then the best culture is, I am part of this organization. I am here just as much as anybody else is. And if the owner is not successful, nor am I. So we're all, it's sort of in between. And I just wonder then, and I know this is probably a totally different podcast, but
we'll just keep talking.
yeah. How do we enact cost cutting without sort of going over to that dark side, which is, the manager's so cheap, the owner is just, so all they want to do is buy that new car. And so they're making us squeeze every last little bit of, color out of this tube, or turn the wax pot off in between clients, or whatever. I suppose there's something, is it about engaging people in that process that you put together?
For sure, but it's also paradigm shift for the leaders. And the paradigm shift is before, the employees were blind to everything going on, and they just bring their clients through and they didn't see the numbers. And so there's kind of a new wave, and this studying leadership is like transparent leadership.
100%.
And so if you're not telling them the numbers, they're making them up. And so what they're making up is, I get paid 50, so you're putting 50 in your pocket.
Right.
And so anything you share with them that's like transparent is going to be like, oh, you don't get all that. Like, they're going to see the reality of the salon business, and they want you to make, someone asked me once, like, do you think your staff want you to get paid? And I'm like, I don't really think they care.
Yeah.
And that was like my limited thinking of like, who they were. Like, that was my limiting belief of like, they don't care if I get paid. And when I actually started sharing it with them, they were working towards getting the profit goal that we had set. And they did care about like making it fair for me and making it fair for the business. They just want to know that it's also fair for them. So we just need a whole paradigm shift. And it's among all industries. It's not just the hair salon. It's like all in or spa or whatever, it's a paradigm shift in that organization exists for everybody on the team, and we're all working for a common goal, and it takes all of us to achieve that, instead of this, like, they're all these little robots to make this outcome happen at the top. And I even go as far as, like, again, a totally other conversation is like flipping the organization chart on its head, and like the leader is actually there to support the people, and it's not for the people to serve and account to the leader, right? So it's just a total paradigm shift of thinking that starts with the leader, and education to the team, and that's how we're going to get more cohesive.
Exactly. And the tool, like we just went through, I think helps illustrate to everybody, no matter whether you're a 2-person operation or a 20-person operation. People can begin to appreciate how little things make that big difference. Like when I threw that quick math out in the beginning, that's a lot of money. That's a whole bunch of money that could be not only just eaten up, let's say, by the owner, but could be used to improve the environment, to give people bonuses, to take, if somebody gets ill on staff, to continue pay them, whatever it takes. It's got to be, this is for the greater good. We perhaps even just set up a little slush fund on the side that could be used for things like health coverage that's not included, or supplement whatever it is.
I love that. Training. You can do anything, right? You can do, if you're working really as a team, you get to choose. And so, but that's the thing, is the numbers don't lie. And so that's where, people just imagine that there's like the money tree, from your parents' backyard.
Shake it.
And it's like, it's all education, and the stylists are not getting the education because the salon owners don't have it. So they're not passing it on. So my mission is to educate the salon owners of what's going on in their business, give them tools, empower them to educate their stylists. And that's going to change, this whole perception of like, my boss is getting rich off me. Like, that's just not happening. It's just not happening. If anything, your boss is sacrificing their life for you, because they're taking on all this liability. They're not paying themselves, and they're likely coming out of this bankrupt or with nothing to show for it. I saw a salon for sale for $1 at the end of someone's career, just trying to get out of their lease. So like, your boss is not getting rich on you. You're like, if anything, they're going broke on you. And so we just need to flip this whole thing on its head and start working for like a common goal. And the common goal is to get everybody the lifestyle that they desire, and, just figure out whose role is what, but get everybody what they want, right?
Yeah. And so really it's about looking at cost cutting, not so much as cost cutting, but really maybe opportunity enabling, right? Like how can we pull a couple of buckets out from behind the boat, and so we all go faster, and we don't really need to be dragging those buckets behind the boat. It's a little analogy I use, being a sailor, is don't be dragging anything behind you. Get forward, get to where you want to be, and you're all better. Of course, commissions are another big, huge piece of this, but we got to do that in another.
Why don't we talk about that next week? Yeah.
Okay. That's huge, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
well, Caylee, thank you so much. So we're going to put all the links below.
Yeah. And I realized, like, we were going to talk about cutting expenses, and we kind of got to like the two big ones, but we could probably do a whole series just on that.
Well, I think cutting expenses I love the tool, and I think it's HR is super important. And just products, cost of goods sold. Remember, we talked about that back in our P&L, and just how do you manage those cost of goods sold and your HR, human resources, because those are big. Just in closing, are there any other quick little fixes that people could look at, even just today or tomorrow or next week, to say, where could they start? Like, how can people start cutting expenses and moving in the right direction when it comes to those, the bottom line?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mentioned I looked for pennies, and the pennies still do make a difference. So you can print out your Visa statement, print out your bank statement, and just line by line, see how you can reduce that. So is it like, I called Moneris every 6 months to say, hey, I've been a client 6 months longer. What can you do for me? And so, you can, again, influence a lot of those numbers. Maybe you have membership subscriptions that you don't need anymore. Maybe you have some surprises that shouldn't have ever been there. We had this Yelp charged for like $800 that started reoccurring, and Yelp had actually called and somehow got the credit card out of one of our receptionists and got them to approve something that they didn't have authority to approve. And had I not been looking at that, you know, that could have gone on for a very long time. So even just catching some mistakes in there can save you a lot of money. So I'd say just make it a habit to go through those line items. And, but there's going to be the main three that are going to really move the dial.
Yeah, for sure. And subscription services are so prevalent now. I mean, if you're playing music in your salon, whatever it is, if you've got an Amazon Prime, it doesn't matter. These things can really, you know, suddenly you've got 30 bags of coffee in the back. The coffee seller is thrilled, but you're paying for that. So these are kind of the kind of expenses that.
Well, and
you need to
maybe
work
like everyone right now can cancel their magazine subscriptions, right? Because
Right.
nobody wants to touch a dirty magazine right now.
I know, it's true. And
Just
that can
cancel
really add
that.
up. Yeah, that's like, you know, a couple of $100 easily.
Sorry,
for
Greg,
sure.
I know. Well, I'm glad you don't do Salon Magazine anymore.
Yeah, no, yeah, that industry is.
And we love that magazine, but let's get a digital copy and an iPad and wipe it clean, right?
Exactly, right? It's just, it's COVID free. Well, Caylee, again, this is wonderful stuff. We're going to have links to everything below.
Cool.
Really look forward to our next conversation on even more ways to spend money, especially on commission. I know that's a huge topic, so we'll save that for later.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Greg. We'll
You
see you
bet.
next
Take
week.
care. Have a great day.
Okay, bye. Bye, everyone.